Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host and special guest, Fiona Perkins. Fiona, thanks for being here with us again.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, so guys, if you don't know who Fiona is one of our advisors. She actually is one of the people you can get on a phone call with if you have a question about your relationship or you're interested in what the activation method for relationships really is all about. You get on a call, there's no obligation or anything, and she'll actually talk to you about what's going on and give you some insights. The idea is always to add value. If you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to the previous podcast Fiona's on, I highly recommend doing that right after this one. So Fiona, thank you again for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's always fun to connect with you and share ideas.
Yeah, I agree. And you got such a great response from the last one. One of the things I want to talk about, you mentioned this before we hit the record button, and I loved this. You said one of the things that you end up talking to so many guys about is
When their wife is on the fence, a lot of guys are trying to pull her down, like, come to my side, instead of trying to make their side of the fence nicer,
I,
more presentable.
and I love that analogy. So guys, let's set the scene here. This happens for so many men. So for whatever reasons, Fiona talked about actually in the last podcast, talking about how women, when they leave the relationship, they've already gone through the mourning cycle and they've usually found a safe landing place. Now, that safe landing place can be a new house, apartment, someplace to live with security, job, and it can also be another man. And sometimes us as husbands, we wake up just before this happens, and then we might find out she's DMing an old high school football player, sweetheart, or whatever, or she's spending more time at the gym than she used to. And you start to notice these subtle things. And maybe she's got one foot in the marriage and one foot out of the marriage. And she's wondering, is the grass greener on the other side? And so what you're saying, Fiona, is a lot of the guys you talk to are spending so much time trying to pull the wife off the fence onto their side. And you're offering a totally different solution.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I always tell guys that I talk to when they're in this situation, when she's on the fence, she hasn't made her mind up yet. So she's looking for anything and everything to help her decide which side to get off on. And often when guys realize this is going on, they get really needy and clingy and desperate sometimes because they don't want to lose the woman that they love, that they want to spend the rest of their lives with. And so the approach they'll tend to take is just trying to, grab onto whichever piece of her they can get and try to pull her down onto their side. But what she really needs is to see that that side of the fence is the nicer side, that the grass is greener, that everything's a little bit brighter and cleaner. And so I think that, shifting the focus can often have the effect that these guys are looking for instead of pushing their wife away.
So let me ask you a question from a female's perspective. Is neediness sexy?
No, I don't think you needed to ask.
I think most men know that. However, like you said it very eloquently, is as guys, you start grasping onto whatever parts of her you can, because here's the woman you love, right? And you start, especially when you're going through a loss, almost, you start remembering how it used to be, how you used to look at each other in eyes of love, admiration, respect, and all of these great things. And now she's getting ready to leave. And guys start chasing her. They start requesting things, calling too much, texting. They want to sit down and talk all of a sudden, all the time. And they put out this needy, less than energy.
It is exhausting. And to be fair, like when your woman is half on, half off, right? One foot in, one foot out, like it's a logical response. You want to show her that you're there and that you care and that you want to connect, but the things that you're doing to try to show her that are things that push her away, and then also make her feel guilty and make her feel shame around where she's at in the relationship. And so it ends up not being helpful to anybody. And then do you really want her to stay because she feels sorry for you?
Yeah. And no guy does, right? We all know that answer. It's just,
Right.
you get into this scarcity mindset as a man or as a human, really, but you don't know what to do. We've talked about a lot in this podcast. Most guys go into typical nice guy syndrome, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna be a better boy, right? I'm gonna be a
Right.
better husband, and I'll clean the house so she's not stressed about that. And a lot of times, guys, what your wife is complaining about has nothing to do with the real issue, right? Again, it's a symptom of the problem. And it's not the core thing she's not really looking for you to solve these little things. Sure, she wants help around the house. Sure, she wants a partner that's going to contribute, but that's not what it's about. Your wife will get a dog if she wants someone that's just going to be obedient. She'll just get a pet. And she's not looking for a pet. She's looking for a man.
Right. And we sometimes like we take a little while to process like what is it that's frustrating to me. Not that we don't appreciate when you help out with the house or anything like that, but we want to remember why we married you at that point. We're checking out, we're looking for, which side right of that fence to get off of. So it's like, well, why am I here again? What got me here in the first place? And so when we see that, there's not a lot of those things that brought us to your side of the fence in the first place, that we're seeing less and less of that man that we fell in love with, it's going to make us lean the other way.
And I love the analogy because I can picture, I'm guessing, the guys can picture this too. And I'm picturing a woman on a fence,
Yeah, chain
right?
link.
Right there, right? She's walking along this fence line and she's looking back at her marriage or her husband's yard. And there's some trash there. He stopped working out. We'll call those, the grass is growing too high. He's stopped taking care of himself. He's wearing the same sweats he wore since college, right? Or walking around the house, especially with the pandemic going on.
Oh
There's not,
yeah.
you fall into these old routines and he's letting himself go. His dreams and ambitions may have gone. And what a lot of our guys do, because we focus on business owners, is they just turn to business and now they've become workaholics in a lot of ways. And so she's looking at this yard, again, weeds, the grass is too high. There's some old rusty stuff in the yard that hasn't been tended to. And then she looks at the other side. That yard over there has been mowed. It's been tended to. Someone's putting care into it, right? And so that looks tempting to go over there. And when we talk about when guys join the activation method, sometimes instantly by joining, things in their relationship start changing. It's the analogy of that woman looking back at her husband's yard and all of a sudden seeing him take the lawnmower out, right?
Right.
He's starting
Yeah.
to cut the grass. And she, just by the act of seeing that he is going to cut the grass, a lot of women go, okay, I'm willing to check this out and stay a little longer.
Right. It's just reminding us, okay, like he can take care of things, right? And
Mhm.
and if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of me? And if you can't take care of our yard, right? How are you going to take care of our children?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about the pulling out the lawnmower. I like that one.
Yeah. And, when we use we call the triad of connection, right? Which is the clean slate method, hidden motive techniques, and live like a king system. Now you're getting out all the gardening tools, right? You've gotten
Right.
it all out. When the guys start applying these things, it's almost like magic. And again, during all sports, especially during spring, there's all these ads and you got guys out there with fertilizers they're advertising to guys that really love their yards. And I'm picturing a guy going through the activation method as one of these guys who all of a sudden is really taking care of his yard, but he's putting the nicest fertilizer out. And his grass looks so friggin' green and clean that his wife she doesn't stand on the fence anymore. She jumps back into the yard, right? And she's excited to be there.
Right. And I can't help but I use the fertilizer thing when I talk about the flower analogy. You're familiar
No,
with that one?
tell me.
Okay, I'll take it away. So we always talk about like women being like flowers, and it's kind of silly until you hear it, and then you're like, oh, okay. So, I always say a woman's like a flower. So if you take the flower and you put it in the guest bathroom, right, and the guest bathroom doesn't have any windows, and you don't really go in there because it's the guest bathroom, it's not getting sunlight, it's now not getting watered. The flower is just going to wilt. It's not going to thrive. Whereas if you take that same flower you move it into the sunroom with just enough light and you're walking by it. So of course you remember to water it, right? And then maybe every once in a while you throw that fertilizer in there. Well, now that flower is going to open up and bloom. And so it's kind of the same thing, because when you work through that, like you said, triad of connection, it creates an environment for your wife where she can start to open up and thrive and blossom. And through that, she's going to feel more connected and safer.
Which is, I mean, there's no man listening to this that doesn't want that, right, guys? I mean, a common thing that men hear from their wives is, I don't feel safe. And I know when my wife told me that, Fiona, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I'm physically adept at, like, oh, how could you not feel safe? Or like, I could protect you. Like, if we have to fight, I'll fight. Like, it's not a big, she wasn't talking about that at all. It had nothing to do with the physical. It took me a while. I'm slower than most people.
Right. Well, it's just one of those things I've realized, especially, we had a conversation about this, all of the advisors, we get together and we kind of talk and we share different situations that have been brought up and how we've handled them and stuff. And so one of the things that I brought to the table one day was that the guys were kind of struggling with this idea of emotional security, of safety. And so what I kind of, brought up with them was that it's this different thing for women, right? Whereas like men, don't need that safety as much. It's like physical safety. Okay. I'm physically safe, so good. Go on to the next need. But women are the opposite, where we're looking for stability. And if there's this history of instability in the relationship, whether it be broken promises or fighting or lost tempers, it doesn't really matter like how often it's happening. It matters that there's been this pattern of instability. Well, over time, that slowly erodes our idea of trust in our man. And if we don't have trust, then we don't feel like we can open up and be vulnerable with him. We don't feel like we can talk to him about things because we don't know if he's going to blow up. And so that erosion of trust leads to this lack of emotional safety, which to women is very similar to physical safety. It's almost the same.
Yeah, we talk about it in coaching, the design of human needs. And a lot of times we say women, right? Again, bell-shaped curve. I always have to throw this disclaimer out there because I'll get a few emails. But women crave certainty. Men crave significance, right? And so, if you can provide your woman, I'll tell you from my perspective, guys listening to this, and I'll share with you, Fiona, is if you can provide your woman with that certainty so she can blossom like that flower, that radiance that you see in her, and she keeps growing, there's nothing as a man that makes you feel more significant at the same time of having a woman, that is blossoming, that is opened up, that is enjoying her life to the fullest. Guys kind of walk around like, yeah, I did that, that kind of bravado.
And they should, you see it one of two ways, right? So some guys do react like that, where it's like, yeah, I did that. And it gives them this boost of significance or confidence. And then you have the other guys who are threatened by it. We're like, oh, I've opened her up. Now she's more appealing. Now she's more attractive to other men. And they can take that as sort of a threat and like crack under that pressure. It's interesting to see the two.
Well, that's really interesting, right? So when that's jealousy, and jealousy happens to happens. We talk a lot about this through the program, because jealousy is a lack of self-love and self-confidence that men go through. Everybody gets jealous from time to time. It's natural. But what I've also noticed, my wife coaches women, so I get the other perspective so much. And I used to run a private training gym in Santa Barbara, California. So a lot of women come in, get to know them very, very well. It's amazing what people tell you when you torture them 3-4 days a week. But what was really interesting is women who are opened up, right? So if a man does this, right, you've opened up, you've created this level of certainty, stability for her. She's opened up, she's blossoming, she's looking more attractive to men. She doesn't care about them. She wants more of you. And that's what a lot of guys miss, is if you can lay back on the jealousy and use, what we call, there's a stick man exercise we teach the guys. If you're able to stay out of that and allow your woman. Yes, guys are going to look. Yes, guys are going to be guys, but she's not going to care. She is going to be more committed to you and your relationship than she's ever been before, because you are providing, if I can use your flower analogy, you're providing the sunlight, you're providing the fertilizer, the food for her. And women are smart. They know, right? And she's not looking for just to upgrade at this point, right? The only woman that's looking to upgrade is, like we talked about before, is looking to jump ship, because she's not getting the sunlight. You put her in a closet where it's dark and it's dingy and she's wilting. That's when your wife is looking to leave.
Right. And you have to think about, like, biologically, right? Women are attracted to a man for the level of safety, right? Or for the provision. So we see that differently as we've evolved as a society and humans, but we're still looking to our men to provide for us in certain ways. And a lot of guys start to think like, oh, this means like finances. Well, if I'm making money, I'm providing for her. But it's not that at all. It's what you're talking about: the sunlight, the water, the fertilizer, that environment for us to be safe and comfortable, to be vulnerable and feminine, because that's not always easy for us, right? As women, we get stuck in these roles as mom and worker, being in our masculine all the time. And so when we come home and we have to be guarded around our husband because we don't feel safe, you're creating that on the fence scenario that we were talking about, where she's looking for the way out because her needs aren't being met, and you're throwing money at it, or you're trying to pull her down and tell her like, I love you. And when she's at that point, she's not hearing I love you. She's seeing you push her, right? She's not feeling that he wants to connect. She's feeling that he's pushing. And
Yep.
so it creates this distance when he's looking for closeness the most.
It is exactly what it is. And to top it off, a really common pattern. I was talking to one of our guys last week about this. I said, let me guess. You're right. Your wife has pulled away a little bit. So you're pushing away a little bit more. So you don't want to get hurt. So now she's feeling this pushing away. Now she's hurting. And now you guys are creating more distance between each other, where, if she comes and talks to you, you're snubbing her, so to speak. And it's not really his fault or her fault. It's just over generations, things have changed. The dynamics have changed. Like you said, we're still wired like we were hundreds of years ago, where a woman would be looking for a man specifically for physical protection. She doesn't need that as much anymore, right? That worry's still there.
Right.
Women are always worried. It's innate. Then it went down to, okay, now the man provides the economic protection. Well, guess what? She can make her own money now, right? She doesn't need that. But we still need each other, right? And like you said, for a man to be in what we call a powerful man, to be in his presence, to create that polarity, to have that masculinity that most men have never been taught, right? That provides a container for the woman to be in her femininity and be the feminine goddess that she's always wanted to be and is known as there. And when those two things come together, it is magic. It is absolutely magic. And it's like watching an amazing dance happen. But the problem is, none of us were ever taught that.
Right. And once you learn it, what I've realized is that you can't like unlearn it, right? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's something that is relatively simple once you understand it, but it's so complicated thinking about, well, how do I, make her feel emotionally safe if I can't even wrap my head 100% around what that is? And so it's nice to be given a toolbox and coaching and like, hey, this is exactly how you can do this and provide this for your woman. And I love that we're able to give that to these men.
I do too. Well, Fiona, I want to wrap this up for some of these guys. And guys, I want to take you back to the beginning of this conversation. If your wife is on the fence, she's looking at your yard, she's looking at the other yards that are out there. How is your yard? Instead of what Fiona is saying, instead of being needy and trying to pull her your way, what if you just cleaned up your yard? What if you took care of yourself? What if you adopted your own alpha rise and shine, your own alpha decompression? What if you use the triadic connection? These tools, just like a lawnmower would do it, a weed eater, fertilizer. We give some industrial tools to these guys to help make their lawn look the best it possibly can. What if you focused your energy there? So when your wife looks back at your side of the fence, it is inviting. It is the type of yard that she wants to dive into. And then you won't have to worry about her being on the fence ever again.
I love it.
Fiona, thank you so much for all that you do for the movement, for the men that you speak with, and for being here today. I absolutely love it. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again. And guys, as I always say in the moment of insight, take massive action. Just don't go listening from podcast to podcast. Be one of those 1% guys. I know you are. Make the change. And we'll see you next time on The Powerful Man Show.